Welcome to the Altogether Show with Eric Satz. On this show, you'll hear Eric's unfiltered interviews with interesting and untraditional entrepreneurs who ignored boundaries, followed their instincts and own paths, and are now empowering others to do the same. Subscribe to the show and learn more by visiting altogether.show. And now your host, Eric Satz.
My guest on the show this week is Alex Lieberman, co-founder of The Morning Brew, a daily business newsletter which shows up in your inbox every morning. And if you're not an economics major, this is the business newsletter for you. Alex started The Brew while still an undergraduate student at the University of Michigan. And even though he went to Wall Street and took on a great job, he ended up leaving to roll the dice on making The Morning Brew what it is today. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed getting to know Alex.
This episode of the Altogether Show is brought to you by Alto IRA. Alto is a digital, self-directed IRA company modernizing IRA investing. They make it easy and cost-effective for individual investors to access their retirement savings and invest in alternative assets. To learn more, visit altoira.com.
Alex Lieberman, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I hope this is going to be a lot of fun for both of us. So by way of background, for those who don't yet know, Alex is the co-founder of The Morning Brew. He grew up in New Jersey, went to the University of Michigan, Morgan Stanley, up to that point, all, shall we say, somewhat traditional. And then he breaks out and commits full time to the Morning Brew. In your own words, who are you? Who is Alex Lieberman?
Alex Lieberman is, I think, at heart, part Curious George, part empath. I think my life, what I do, I think is all defined by my love of people, getting to know people, and my brain naturally being frenetic and moving in 50 different directions, which allows me to think creatively, which allows me, just to think of new possibilities for things, but also which forces me to surround myself with incredibly smart people who are process thinkers, who are great operational thinkers, to put some of the things that I think about into practice. And so I'm a creative, I'm a curious, and I love building relationships with people.
So let's go back and start at the beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born July 5th, 1993, just turned 27. And I was born in Morristown, New Jersey, grew up in New Jersey. I'm in New Jersey now. Been here since the start of quarantine, and normally would be in Manhattan. That's where I've spent the last 5 years since graduating from college. But,
and so, are you back with the family?
Yep, I'm in my mom's place in West Orange, New Jersey. My sister is back here also. She works in finance, actually, for the same company that I worked for. She works in human resources, which is definitely one of the ironies of our family. I think if you would have guessed that I would be the one in media and my sister would be the one in finance, everyone would think you're out of your mind. But I'm with the family here.
So sister is younger or older?
Sister's younger. She is 23. She went to Michigan as well.
So I have to ask, what's the attraction to the University of Michigan? Because everybody knows that the real UM is the University of Miami.
And by everyone, you mean
everybody that didn't go to the University of Michigan.
That's why I think that's why the word "of" is such an important caveat. U of M and UM. So I loved Miami. When I was visiting schools, I visited Miami, and the only reason that I decided not to go was because when I was walking on campus and I saw a pool in the middle of campus, I said to myself that I know myself well enough to know that this will be this pool equals not doing well in classes. Like I will spend all of my time just hanging out at the pool. And so that was one of the reasons I didn't go to Miami, in the same way I didn't go to Colorado, because I said I would be skiing a mountain all day rather than going to class. So I went to Michigan for two reasons. One is because I wanted a very different experience from my high school experience. I went to a small private school in New Jersey that I think in some ways was amazing. It was incredibly rigorous academics. Athletics were top notch, especially for the sports that I played. I played golf, soccer, and I skied in high school. But I think in some ways I didn't feel fully fulfilled in my high school experience. Socially, didn't feel like there was a ton of school spirit. And so I wanted something very different. I went to Michigan, which actually was about as different as it got from the high school I went to. My graduating class was 120 people. A third of the grade went Ivy League. Another third went to all of the NESCAC schools like Middlebury, Lehigh, Colgate, Colby. And then the other third was kind of like the mixed bag of people who wanted to do something different. I was in that mixed bag. And so went to Michigan just for a different experience that I felt like would be well-rounded, that had a lot of school spirit, that had what I felt like was the right amount of balance on academics, social, and athletics. And then the second reason was, it was my dream to work in finance. I grew up in a finance family. My dad worked in sales and trading for Citigroup for 20 years. My mom worked in sales and trading for Nomura for 20 years. My grandpa worked in sales and trading for Prudential for a long time. And so, as someone who views family as the most important thing in life, my only goal was to be like my role models, and therefore there was only one option. And so I went to Michigan for the undergrad business program, so that hopefully that would set me up for success to get a job in finance out of school.
So you're a three-sport athlete in high school, and you're going to arguably one of the best universities, not just in the US, but globally in terms of Division I athletics. Did athletics play a role for you in that decision, or was it purely this finance part?
Originally, I was thinking about playing a sport. I wasn't going to be good enough at the two sports I was thinking about, primarily golf, to play in college. I probably would have been able to play Division III, wouldn't have been able to play Division I. And so I didn't end up playing a sport at Michigan. But I think if you just think of schools with school spirit, it generally stems from athletics. I'm hard pressed thinking of a school where they don't have a really strong athletics program, but they have incredible school spirit. I can't. Yeah, it's hard to identify. Maybe you could argue that like the Ivy Leagues, because there's a certain level of like prestige around it that creates affinity for the brands. But anyway, it's difficult to think about. And so, yes, I think it's all intertwined. I went to Michigan for school spirit, but that school spirit is a function of athletics, which is also why I was really interested in going to the Big House for football games, going to Yost Ice Arena for hockey games, going to Chrysler Arena for basketball games.
That's a nice trio right there. That's a good way to do it. So did you apply, and I don't know the process for Michigan, but do you apply directly into the Ross School of Business, or do you go to Michigan first and then apply?
Yeah, so when I went, you had two options. You could either go pre-admit, or you could go general admission to Michigan and then apply to the business school. I wasn't nearly a good enough student in high school to get in pre-admit. And at the time when I applied, it was, say my class of business school students was, 500 people. I would say 30 of them were pre-admits, and 400 and 70 of them were from general admission. So I went general admission. Freshman year, take classes at Michigan. You have to take certain prerequisites to apply to the business school. I believe the prerequisites it was calc, I think it was English, it was econ, and I think there was one other. And so you take those, you apply at the end of freshman year, and during freshman summer, you find out if you get into the business school. And if you do, it's a 3-year program, sophomore, junior, senior year. Now, I think the way the school's oriented is actually most people apply to the business program from high school. You know from high school if you're in the business program, and the vast minority of people actually like enter the business program after actually getting accepted to Michigan.
You go with the idea that you're going to be on a sales and trading desk somewhere. And yet your senior year, you start what will eventually become the Morning Brew. Can you talk to, and I'm sure you've been asked the question before, but why do you start this email? Why do you start this newsletter? What's the light bulb that goes off?
Yeah. So I, as you said earlier in the interview, I was doing everything in a very traditional sense. Went to private high school, went to a college, was looking to go into finance. And so I did, in conjunction with that, I did the classic internship thing while I was in college. So I did an internship in finance after my freshman year, my sophomore year, my junior year of college. And so I got into my senior year. I was lucky enough that I received a job offer after my junior year summer to return to Morgan Stanley to trade on their mortgage desk. And so I got into my senior year. I had this job in hand already. I'd already signed the offer because for all intents and purposes, that was my dream job. So I signed it basically the day after I got it. And so I didn't have to worry about recruiting or re-recruiting my senior year. And at the same time, I only had to take 3 classes my entire senior year just because of the way my credits worked out. And so I had all of this free time. And I basically said to myself, what can I do to keep myself sharp and in the know about what's happening in financial markets and the business world, so that after this long hiatus of doing nothing, I'm still kind of on my A game for my job. And so what I started doing was I was just like reading news every day. And at some point I decided that I would start writing a daily business roundup. And the reason I started writing it is I was helping students prepare for job interviews because a lot of students were re-recruiting their senior year. And I would always ask in mock interviewing them, how do you keep up with the business world? And this was a question my dad would ask me when I was prepping for job interviews. And the answer that every student gave me was basically something to the effect of, I read the Wall Street Journal, and I read it because I feel like I have to, because it's a prerequisite to say I'm well read in business, but it's dense, it's dry, and I can't get through the whole thing. It's long. And so at some point, it was kind of, I saw the opportunity to force myself to stay up to date with business. And also I saw this just appetite for something else. I didn't know what the something else was at that point. And so I started just taking my reading from the day, and I would start writing a daily business roundup. It was called Market Corner. I used that word because it was just a play on cornering the market. I used a Microsoft Word template,
of course,
for newsletters, you go, which I haven't done this in probably since I created Market Corner. But basically, when you go into Microsoft, you have their gallery of templates. I went to one of the templates in the gallery. I got a picture of a bear and a bull fighting from Google Images, still had the watermark going across it. And basically, I wrote what was, let's call it V 0.1 of Morning Brew. It had the top 5 stories of the day condensed into 50 to 150 word blurbs. I had where all the major indices had closed. I had a stock pitch of the day. I had an inspirational quote of the day, a important business person of the day, and a business term of the day. And when I visualized the one I look back to, it was the business term of the day was FICO. The business person of the day, I believe, was Carl Icahn. And the inspirational quote of the day, I can't remember what it was, but I remember that it related to this 50-year-old guy that had grown up with lions, and lions were like his best friend. So I'm not sure how that related back to business, but that made its way into Market Corner. And so I did that for basically 3 months on my own. let's call it October, November, December of 2014, I saw just sheer word of mouth cause this newsletter audience to grow to, let's call it, between 500 and 1,000 people. And while that was a modest number, it was clear that there was appetite for better business content because my writing was mediocre. The look of the product was mediocre. It was impossible to sign up for it because there's no website. So you had to message me, letting me know you heard about my Market Corner and you wanted me to add you to my listserv, where you would then have to give me your email. I would input your email and you'd start getting it. So the difficulty through which you had to sign up for this thing, like, told me that clearly there's a need. I brought on Austin Reef, my co-founder, over winter break of 2014. And then we launched Morning Brew as a daily email newsletter where the template actually was in email in early 2015. And at the time, Austin was a sophomore at Michigan while I was a senior. We were both in the same fraternity, but didn't even know each other through the fraternity. He just was a reader of Market Corner and had ideas for how it could be better. And that was the genesis of the
That's
business.
a really cool story. And I think for anyone who is sort of aspiring to be an entrepreneur, I think the silver lining there is you thought your writing was okay, mediocre. The process for signing up was close to impossible relative to what one does today. And yet you saw the lists growing, if not yet exponentially, certainly, significantly without marketing, without trying. It's just like key indicator, there's demand for what I'm doing. How do we make it better? So, it's interesting to go from how many people were on the first email you sent out, by the way?
Very first email was sent to 45 people. It was sent to my family. It was sent to the people I was helping prepare for job interviews. And then it was sent to probably the guys that I lived with at Michigan, and that was it.
It kind of grows 20 times by the time you go to break. How do you get from 1,000 to 10,000?
So 1,000 to 10,000 was basically entirely three things. It was word of mouth. It was a few cross promotions with other email newsletters where I was trying to look up and find out other small email newsletters that had between, let's call it 5 and 15,000 subscribers. Because one thing we learned early on is that when you cross promote with a same channel partner, it generally does better rather than Morning Brew cross promoting with, say, a podcast or a YouTube channel. We set up a college ambassador program early on. That got us a few thousand, where it started with Michigan, Indiana, and a few other Big Ten schools. And at some point, it ended up expanding to like 100 schools. And then the other thing was just brute forcing it within Michigan, where Austin and myself basically forced our way into every single class that had to do with business or was a class that catered to a professional or business interested audience. We made announcements in those classes. We passed around a sheet of paper to everyone in the class after making the announcement. And we said, if you want to sign up, write down your email address. We will sign you up. And we just did that over and over and over. And we did it in all the clubs as well. And basically it was those three things that got us to
classic story,
10,000.
Doing things which are completely unscalable to get to a place where you can actually scale.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting because I think people talk about doing things that don't scale just in the early days of the business, but I would actually say there are unscalable things that you should do throughout the life of the business. For example, like me responding to every email that a Morning Brew reader sends me with feedback on the newsletter or questions or whatever, I still respond to every one. Is it the best use of my time? One could argue it's not. I would say it is, because I think it is keeping me close to our customer. And also, at the end of the day, while I think I'm just some regular guy, to our readers who are deciding to email into Morning Brew, I think they think of our team as celebrities. And so imagine if, like, you think about one of your celebrities, let's just say hypothetically it was, I don't know, Bruce Springsteen, and you were to shoot a message over to Bruce over email, and Bruce was to email you back, you just, if you play out in your mind the feeling you would feel from that, it would make your day. And so to me, even if it's not scalable, I can recreate that experience for people. The odds that they are going to act as megaphones for the business after that experience, probably
I completely agree with you. And so you just had a birthday, happy birthday, which makes you a Cancer.
Thank you.
Which and some of those characteristics are being tenacious and highly intuitive. And so I think one of the things that you just said with respect to the way a reader / customer responds to receiving a response from you is in fact highly intuitive. You now have a customer for life. And I'll actually give my own firsthand morning brew story here, which was awesome. It was a Saturday morning. I'm sitting on my porch, and I'm reading the brew because I guess did enough referrals to get the Saturday brew at that point. And there's something in there about microwaving a bagel. So I have to respond to this. And I say, if you're using bagel and microwave in the same sentence, like game over, you've lost. Okay. So throw that bagel out. Let's start. Let's get to the heart of the matter. Let's start over.
That's hilarious.
And within 10 minutes, I had a response, which was, of course, the tongue-in-cheek response that I was looking for, which was, thank you for your attention to this serious matter. Right. And that is amazing. I'm going to tell you the second amazing part of it in a second, which was, so first of all, for us at Alto, and clearly for you all, customer service and customer interaction, hugely important because it otherwise doesn't exist in our industry. And clearly your folks get it and understand it. But what became really fun was that the person who responded was actually at Amherst College, which is where I went to school. And so clearly you are hiring in a very smart, strategic way. So that kind
is awesome.
Told me everything. So go ahead.
I was going to say just what one point there, which is like also oftentimes unscalable things are things that are not like commonplace, right? Like unscalable things are oftentimes like not commoditized things. And so what that means is like oftentimes unscalable things are non-cliche things because if everyone does them, they become cliche. And the reason I think that's so important for people to get is your experience you just said about the microwave and the bagel and the person responding, thanks so much for about this very serious matter. Like imagine if we did this unscalable thing where our responses to people's emails, not just to you, but to everyone, not just think about, okay, let's respond to everyone, but how do we respond to everyone in like a highly curated, highly customized way where it leaves the person cracking a smile when they read it. And to me, is there actually a way to use that as a marketing channel? Is that actually a way where people end up hearing about, wow, Morning Brew's email responses are just so genius. Like now I just want to email them just to see what they say to me. And then can you get press from that initially unscalable activity? And so I think when you think of doing unscalable things, the reason there's a lot of growth and marketing juice pent up is because they are usually non-cliche things. And when things are non-cliche, people latch onto them because they feel like unique ideas.
Since we're talking about cliches, most people will say that good news travels by boat and bad news travels by plane. And I think one of the things that the internet and email and social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it may be, has changed about that cliche is that good news can travel by plane now too. And, when you have the experience like the one I had with the brew, you want to tell people about it. And I have a way to tell people about it, which actually leads me to your referral program, which I think most people agree has been geniusly executed and written about. And so I'd love to understand, to the extent that you can explain, and you are a storyteller, the genesis behind the referral program, and not so much the inner workings, right? Not so much the mechanics, but what I'm really curious about is how you pick the prizes at given levels. Why is that the right order?
Yep. And as we talk through this, I'm going to go to morningbrew.com and put my email address in so I can talk through the referrals with you. So what is the evolution of the referral program? So basically, where I will start is by saying this. A referral program is a wrapper. A referral program is not the product, meaning the product needs to be really, really, really good in order for the wrapper to do anything. And I think that's such an important point because I think these days everyone is trying to slap a referral program onto something. But if you slap a referral program onto dog shit, it's still dog shit, no matter how hard you're trying to get people to buy it. And so the first thing for us was, let's make sure Morning Brew is the best read for the modern business leader, bar none, so that we are giving people the ammunition to want to tell others about it. And once we get to that place, then let's basically do everything possible with a referral mechanism to make it as easy as possible and unscrew-upable as possible to share the thing that they really like. And so once we got the product there, then we said, okay, how can we build a referral program as low cost as possible? Because I can't even remember exactly when it was, but we probably first introduced the referral program in 2016, I would say, at some point in 2016. And so we weren't funded yet. We weren't full-time yet. We weren't making money yet. So we knew we had to do it really cheaply. And the way, by the way, that we found out about the referral program is if you just go to Google and you type in Harry's Razor referral program, you're going to find an article that it's usually like, it's 6 results down. It's through Tim Ferriss's blog. It says how to gather 100,000 emails in a week. And basically this story walks you through the design of their landing page, their referral program, and there's actually a link to the GitHub code for the referral page. And so we saw this and we're like, okay, this clearly can't be that hard to build. And so then what we did is we went to Upwork and we just looked for engineers. And I can't remember how we found this guy, but we came across this guy, Connor, good guy, full stack developer in Ohio. And we just basically said, here, this Harry's Razors thing, just can you build this? And Connor was like, oh, that's really funny because I've just built the same exact thing for 5 people in the last 3 weeks. And so he built it for us for $500. The only difference with ours and Harry's Razors was the prizes we gave people and the picture on the landing page. That was it. And that was how we've built our first like custom referral program and just like database in general to track referrals. What I failed to mention was before that, actually, before building it custom, we did use an out-of-the-box solution. We used Kickoff Labs. And Kickoff Labs, I think they're still around. Let's see, are they still around? Yeah, they're still around. The Kickoff Labs is all around like building viral giveaways, sweepstakes, building landing pages for product launches. Kickoff Labs was famous for supporting or powering the waitlist page for Robinhood's launch that built up a massive waitlist. So we used Kickoff Labs first. It was good at doing its job of creating a referral program. It was bad at creating any sort of flexibility to the website you have. Like, because it was through them, we had no flexibility in customizing our website at all. So we went from Kickoff Labs to having Connor from Ohio build this referral program for $500. And then our second hire, who is now our product and tech lead, basically took what Connor built and rebuilt it using a lot of, I think, the initial logic, but making it even more custom to us. And so that was the evolution of our referral program. And to this day, it is, I would say the number one most important tool for growth within Morning Brew. We have 2.3 million subscribers to the daily newsletter, to Morning Brew proper. And I believe right around 300,000 subscribers have gotten at least one referral, which is a massive number of people, which has such a flywheel effect because it incentivizes us to pay more on paid acquisition to get new subscribers, because we know every subscriber is actually worth a little bit more than one subscriber. And it brings down the blended cost of acquiring new subscribers. So the referral program has been hugely successful for us. And in the most long-winded fashion humanly possible, your initial question was, why the rewards? So if I look at Morning Brew's referral page, three referrals, you get the Sunday edition of our newsletter called Light Roast. 5 referrals, you get custom brew stickers. Right now it's a trio of stickers. One is like a cartoon phone man holding a mug. Then there's the Morning Brew mug. Then there's a sticker that says Rise and Grind. The rise and grind words are in like a yellow. The and is in our Morning Brew blue. 10 is a bottle opener with a chain. 15 is a coffee mug. 25 is a t-shirt. 50 is a set of 2 pint glasses. 100 is a crew neck sweatshirt. And if you get to 1,000, other than getting the keys to the company, you also get a trip to Morning Brew headquarters where we fly you in. Obviously, we need to update that for being quarantined, because I don't know how many people are going to want to get 1,000 referrals to be flown on United to then join us in office. But to the point of how do we choose these? Basically, we said for the people who are Morning Brew's power fans, the people who are going to take time out of their day to share a referral link with someone else to sign up for this, they are going to want things that feel exclusive, that they have a peek behind the curtain, or they have access to things because they are a VIP in the Morning Brew community. Like, feeling like a VIP in the community is really important to them. And also externally being able to show off that they're a VIP, we thought was really important as well. And so basically taking what we thought was like, that was kind of like the nucleus of what motivated these people. Then it was about, how do we offer them great products, but that also aren't that expensive? So from a user acquisition perspective, from a cost of getting a referral perspective, it wouldn't be that much. That's why at 3 referrals, you get the Sunday edition of the brew. No incremental cost other than obviously the cost of our writer's time to write it, the opportunity cost of that, but not true monetary cost. Stickers, which don't cost a lot.
I didn't get that. So, and I'm past that. So I think we should go backwards and send those out.
Yeah, no, let's do that. We're gonna actually play the snake game. So you have to get to 1,000 first, and then once you work your way back, then we'll on the way back we'll get you the opener.
Isn't gonna have my personalized reference link across the bottom of this thing, because it will, because we fight about this at Alto.
Absolutely.
Who gets to what first, for sure.
I love that. And then like the coffee mug, you would think coffee mugs are relatively expensive. It's actually probably the cheapest merch item we found. I think it's 25 cents a mug. Ceramic is very cheap. So basically we pick things that the cost of goods is either zero or very low, yet it is a product that people will value highly and that they can show off publicly.
So long as we're talking about the coffee mug, I got a bone to pick. You said that you put skim milk in your coffee. I don't get that.
Are you a pure a thoroughbred?
I'm not, but I've gone
person?
through. I'm twice as old as you are, right? So I've gone through cycles. So I've done the all black thing for a period of time, and now I'm cream. I get the cream. I get the black. I don't get skim. How do your parents drink their coffee is my question.
Yeah, so I would say my entire family actually uses
Okay. Which,
almond
sure.
milk. I, I'm I'm in it. I'm in a I would say a very health conscious household, and so skim milk is actually I'm like the crazy one of the bunch. Going, wow, he went skim. But I would say I'm half the time drinking with skim milk, half the time drinking no milk at all. I won't do cream. I used to do full like whole milk. I don't know what caused the change from whole to skim. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like people are creatures of habit. I've been doing the same like one or two things for years. And so the cost of breaking that habit, like to truly convince me to do that, I just haven't found the trade-off to be there. I mean, the real trade-off is one day having as much energy as coffee gives me and not having to drink coffee. But that's going to take some serious
let's
reprogramming.
talk about that for a second. What do you do to keep your energy up besides drinking coffee?
Yeah, I need to get at least 7 hours of sleep. Basically, to me, it's the energy and mental health goals that I try to optimize for. If I can get like the triangle of wellness right, that generally dictates a lot. You know, like eating well, exercising well, and sleeping well. If I do those three for an extended period of time, I'll generally feel good. If I miss one of those things for an extended period of time, I will generally feel shitty. Like it's pretty like 100% correlation. Where if I don't sleep more than 6 hours for 3 nights straight, I will feel foggy. If I eat a ton of food late, I will wake up in the morning without energy. Like it just it always happens that way. The other thing that I do is like I'm very much a routinized person, and so I'm actually out of my routine today. But normally, what I do is wake up between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, work out, whether it's a Peloton workout or like a HIIT workout. I will either read or write in the morning, like read the Brew and other non-news, usually longer form content sources that I can read, or I'll try to write, and then I'll start my day. And if I would say 80% of the time I keep that routine, and I find it to be very helpful. And I think I just take that practice from playing golf. Like you talk to any sports psychologist or you talk to any professional golfer, and they'll always say pre-shot routine is the most important thing. And so I think pre-shot routine in life is just an incredibly important thing.
I could not agree more. And, you know, whether it's golf or any other sport, I think having that same routine prior to the action is hugely, hugely helpful. So let's talk about entrepreneurship, and not specifically about the Brew, although you can talk specifically about the Brew. There are a lot of people out there who, and I teach an entrepreneurship class to high school students. And the first couple classes is always about why do this? Let's talk about why you want to be an entrepreneur. Why did you want to be an entrepreneur?
So I don't think I ever wanted to be an entrepreneur per se. Like I wasn't out on this mission to start a business. Like I think there is a slice, and it's probably a pretty large slice of entrepreneurs that were always tinkering with things from a young age. We're always trying to find a way to make a buck. Started the lemonade stand, started the hot dog stand, etc. I would say like I had glimpses of that, but that isn't what defined me. I was more defined by my curiosity. So yes, there were times where like I tried to make money by, you know, selling baseball memorabilia and had the Beckett's guide for selling baseball cards, or, you know, at sleepaway camp, I had my parents send me shoe polish so I could start a shoe polish business. And maybe that is what people talk about when they talk about like starting things, but that isn't what defined me. And I mean, when I started Morning Brew with my co-founder Austin at Michigan, we again weren't thinking of it as a business yet. We weren't thinking of it like, oh, let's go be entrepreneurs. We were just creating something that was really interesting and exciting, and it was cool. It was exciting to grow something. And so I don't think we were seeking out entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship seeks out the curious. And I think by being curious driven people, entrepreneurship sought us out. And then now that we are entrepreneurs, I think, it's kind of like Pandora's box has been open to, yes, the risk, but also just like the incredible opportunity that exists for feeling fulfilled. Like, to me, I can't imagine a world in which I don't go to work feeling energized and obsessed with what I'm doing. But 9 out of 10 people in society probably think I'm crazy for feeling that way. And so it has been such a blessing to basically, be thrown into entrepreneurship unknowingly or unintentionally. And candidly, I don't know if I'm ever going to not be able to be, I don't know if I'm going to ever be able to not be an entrepreneur again, because I don't know. I love building teams. I love solving problems. I love creating things of value, and I love being able to do it on my own terms.
Man, a number of nuggets in there. The first thing I would say, by the way, is that 9 out of 10 people actually wish they could say the same thing that you said, which is that they wake up every day excited, essentially, to go do their job. I think that is a blessing.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're working for Morgan Stanley, and you say, I got to go do this. Like, this is a business. What was there a moment? Was there a conversation that you and Austin were having where you said, all in?
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember what the name was of the tavern. It was Austin flew in from Michigan for a weekend. It was his senior year. And it was his senior year, and I was still working at Morgan Stanley. I can't remember the name of the place. It's like David's Tavern or something. But basically, we were talking about there was a clear fork in the road. Whereas we're either going to do this or we're not. Austin's either going to take his job in investment banking that he got an offer to do, or he's not. And so we talked through it, and we decided that we were going to make the leap. And what caused me to make the decision? Well, I think it was twofold. One is that I've always prided myself on excelling because of my curiosity and my work ethic, not because of my pure intellect. And I say that from a place of like, I believe that to achieve some high level of success where you build something of significant value, there's a base level of intellect. And I think millions of people have that base level of intellect, hundreds of millions. I think that what creates the separation once you're at that base level of intellect is very much just curiosity, effort, critical thinking, relationship building, and sales ability. Like, I think those are a few of the factors that I think of that create that separation. And so one of the reasons that I decided to leave Morgan Stanley is when I was at Morgan Stanley, I felt diluted. I didn't feel like I was excelling because I felt like one of my unfair advantages, which was outworking people, I wasn't able to deploy because I was spending, 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. trading. I would get home, I'd work on Morning Brew for a number of hours, and I felt like I was diluting myself. I felt like if I wanted to be the world's best mortgage trader, very niche group of people that say that, I would have stayed in the office and just studied the craft and the product. If I wanted to be a successful media entrepreneur, then I would not just spend 3 hours of my day working on Morning Brew. So it it was the feeling that I was more passionate about the work that I was doing from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. than the work that I was doing from 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then the final piece, which I do think this was probably the dominant factor, but the most subconscious factor, is when it was a week before my junior year of college, my dad passed away, and he was my biggest role model. He, like I had mentioned earlier in the show, he spent 20 years on Wall Street. He traded mortgages. He traded the exact product that I was trading. And he passed away suddenly from a stroke, was in perfect shape, was built the same way as me. And I think there was a piece of me that was just like, one, this kind of freaks me out. I'm literally taking the exact same path as my dad. I think the second piece was like I saw how hard he worked to provide everything for our family and to teach me and my sister the values that he thought were so important. And I just I don't think in that moment I would have ever been able to forgive myself if the reason I didn't end up succeeding in the thing I was most passionate about was a function of time. And it just, again, like it sounds super cliche, but like it gave me the perspective where after after that happened, yes, like shit constantly hits the fan in life, but it just gave me this almost like naive resilience that like you just figure it out. And so when I played through worst case scenarios with leaving Morgan Stanley, I was like, okay, what's the worst case scenario if I leave? I go work on Morning Brew for 6 months. After those 6 months, it fails. Okay, after it's failed, what do I do? What's the worst case scenario? Okay, well, hopefully, A, I've built up relationships in the startup world in New York City where potentially there's something else to start. There's another early stage company to join. Hopefully, I haven't been a hermit and I've networked with people in the startup scene. Okay, but let's say I'm wrong about that. Then the second is, okay, hopefully I haven't burned every bridge at Morgan Stanley. So maybe this actually adds texture and depth to my career experience where they say, oh, wow, he raised money, he scaled an audience, he hired people. This can actually make him a better trader and a more effective manager. We should hire him back. And I said, okay, say I'm wrong about that. Well, then my thought was this could be a unique business school application because not everyone quits their job in finance to start a newsletter media business. And I started going through all these layers of optionality. And I was like, if I get through all these layers and I have no options left, it is not a function of me leaving my job to do this and failing. It is a function of me failing as a professional to keep doors open, to make relationships with people, to keep my options open. And so my view is I think it was a risk worth taking because I was willing to bet that I wouldn't put myself in that position.
I love that story, and I love the plan A, plan B, plan C. I quit my investment banking job to start a coffee bar in New York City, by the way. I'm not even sure you were born then. But so what has been the hardest part about growing the Morning Brew? What have the toughest challenges been? And then I'm going to ask you to also talk about whether or not luck plays a role in what has happened.
The first question about what has been the biggest challenge, I think the biggest challenge is I'm going to not follow the directions and say two things. One is people. People are the most challenging and most fulfilling thing in running a business. Hiring great people is really hard. Making sure that people continue to be happy is really hard and fulfilled in their work is really hard. Like my view is that the people in your company is like any important relationship, whether that's with a spouse, whether that's with a co-founder, and any successful relationship requires a significant amount of work. But the additional part is it's not just a significant amount of work where both parties are always logical, right? It's not like you're taking a math test and you're right or you're wrong. There's always gray area in relationships, and you're always ebbing and flowing between the rational and the irrational. That's what human beings are. And so I think building an incredible team with people who are fulfilled, who feel like they're paddling in the same direction, know what that direction is, and feel invested in, is the most challenging yet fulfilling thing that we've done. And then the other thing I would say, the biggest challenge is the challenge of yourself, evolving yourself as your business grows. I have found that one, being an entrepreneur is a very, even if you have a co-founder, is a very, at times, emotionally isolative experience where you feel very vulnerable. But also you constantly, and I think one of the reasons you feel vulnerable is because you constantly have to reinvent yourself, because you're constantly hiring people to do things, to do a better job of things than you. And so as you're thinking about, okay, in the early days of the business, there are like 15 things that I'm uniquely qualified to do. As time goes on, it's 12, then 10, then 8, then 6. And you're starting to get nervous. You're like, what, how many things am I actually uniquely qualified to do? And I think that's just the point. At the end of the day, any of us are maybe uniquely qualified to do one, potentially two things. But that's like the sign of also building a successful business. And so I think it's like the challenge of reinventing yourself and having the humility to know that success is actually by firing yourself over and over and over, is like the most powerful thing you can do as a leader and a grower
I
of a
totally
company.
agree with that. And so I want to ask you, what about firing, right? So we've talked about cliches a little bit. And one of the cliches out there is hire slow, fire fast.
Yep.
When you've made a bad hire, it could be a good person, by the way. It could be someone who really believes in the company and the business. How have you found the process of letting someone go?
The short answer to your question is it sucks. Like it always sucks. It never doesn't suck. Um, I I have, in talking to other founders that have let a lot of people go, have almost, the way they talk about it almost has felt like to me the similar to a surgeon who performs many surgeries, and they many times have people like die on the operating table, and you're like, how can you go into your job and do this every day? And I think there's almost like this numbness, this tortoise shell that is built in order to, like, as human beings, adapt and survive that context. I do think a lot of founders adapt that. Thankfully, I haven't fired enough people to, I think, build that tortoise shell. But I also think because of that, I find anytime we've let someone go to be extremely hard. And I actually personalize it as a personal failure. I think the pattern that has tied together every wrong hire we have made, it has been a function of either timing or rushing. So it's either we made the hire not having a clear enough context on what the evolution of the team and the business should look like, and because we didn't map that out properly, we hired someone either too early or too late. The second is rushing. Whenever we have felt like we have rushed a hire because it's taken us really long to hire someone and we just need to make that hire, that is like the worst possible thing we've ever done. It never ends up resulting in a positive outcome. And so I think for us, it's important to know kind of like what are our crutches that will have a tendency to lean into that will cause us to make hiring mistakes, and let's not do those again. And then as it relates to firing, I think just in reality knowing that it's never going to be easy. And also, at the end of the day, I think if you fire properly, it shouldn't be a blindside forever for the person you're firing. Like it should be an understood thing when that happens, unless it is a round of layoffs related to a business problem. Individual firings should not be
Completely
surprises.
agree. So, and we're getting towards the end. How do you, so the Morning Brew writes about money and business on a daily basis. How do you think about money in your personal life? How do you think about budgeting, saving, investing. I'll leave it at
that. Not enough. Candidly, not enough. I would consider myself someone who is very frugal. And I actually think I default to frugality because of lack of knowledge. I actually think if I was more educated in how I manage my money, I probably counterintuitively would spend more because I would actually know like truly how much I am saving, truly how much I am putting into the right places to allow it to compound over time. But because I don't think I have that level of granularity, I always opt to not buy, not spend versus do so. So I actually think my lack of financial literacy keeps me from spending more, which is like the most ironic thing. I basically where I spend my money is basically investing in myself and investing in my relationships. That's like it. My biggest purchase in the last 6 months was I bought a writing course for $2,000, an online writing course to understand how to be a prolific writer where I can pump out a long form essay on a weekly basis and how I use that long form essay as a way to continue to extend my brand and build digital connections. To me, that $2,000 was a no-brainer. Another example is I see a therapist, let's call it every 2 to 4 weeks. That therapist costs $250. Back in the day when I was first starting therapy, like sophomore year of college, it was like pained me to pay for the session because like this is so much freaking money. But now it's just like a no-brainer. It's like an absolute
your
no-brainer
mental
to
health.
invest in
Yes.
me feeling good. Yeah, because if I don't feel good, what does anything else matter? So I invest in myself, and then I invest in my relationships, in experiencing things with my family, with my girlfriend, with my close friends, and that's kind of it. I don't really spend that much on clothes. I don't really like my only expensive habit maybe is watches. But honestly, I say that, but I haven't bought a new watch since senior year of high school. I just have, college. But that's it. It's experiences and it's education and bettering myself.
That's really interesting because if you think about your audience and where you started, University of Michigan, and the college reader and the reader who has just graduated from college, maybe even in business school, I think financial literacy is sorely missing. Clearly in that demographic, but I would say more broadly across the country. And so I know you all are always thinking about kind of how do we grow this business? How do we get bigger? I think there's a huge hole in financial literacy, which, starting with 2.3 million readers who clearly have some interest in it, might be a great place to start.
I totally agree. And I think what you will see from the Brew is as time goes on, we are going to create more content that relates to personal finance and financial literacy. I think the biggest thing is one, can it be monetized outside of advertising? Can it be monetized outside of advertising? And if the answer is if not, like, let's just say it's okay, this isn't going to be where we take our shot to monetize our audience outside of advertising. The question is how do you make it differentiated? Because there is so much of all of the different content subjects. I feel like there's so much content in the world of personal finance, yet it's this counterintuitive thing where people aren't financially educated. And I guess maybe one can assume that means just the content is dog shit. But I think it becomes, with everything we create, content is our product. How is our content going to be 5x better and different from what else is out there? And I
think the other thing which should not be discounted is your voice. And I don't know if you saw, or I don't know if you read the New York Times, but in addition to the Morning Brew, yep, I get what's now called The Morning from the New York Times. And The Morning came out, they just did a sort of rebrand and change. And in the first week, they asked for some feedback based on what they were doing. And my response was, because I respond to these things because I can't help myself. My response was, hey, how about you let the Morning Brew be the Morning Brew and you be the New York Times? Like you're trying too hard in some places that just don't work. And by the way, I'm sure I wasn't the only one who wrote this. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who noticed the change in voice, but their tone changed and it became more in line with what you expect from the New York Times. And, the Morning Brew is the Morning Brew. They did not write back to me, which to your point is a lost opportunity, not scalable, but a lost opportunity.
Totally.
And so in any
100%.
event, by the way, I have lots of ideas as to how you can monetize the business beyond advertising. If you're game, would love to talk to you about that in the future. But for now, I'd love to thank you for being on the show. I really appreciated your perspective and having you and your viewpoint, and nothing but the best in the future to you and the Morning Brew.
Thank you so much for having me. Always appreciate the conversation and the time.
The Altogether Show is brought to you by Alto IRA. Alto knows that public markets offer insufficient diversification of retirement accounts. That's why Alto developed a streamlined platform to make it easy and cost-effective for anyone to invest their tax-advantaged retirement savings in alternatives. Assets like real estate, venture capital, and crypto that are outside of the public markets and available through Alto's 21 platform partners. To learn more, visit altoira.com.